With the rising of the sun and awakening of men in the lands of Hildorian, the First Age dawned upon the peoples of Middle-earth. Yet as human settlements began to spread throughout the east, they eventually came to the attention of the Dark Lord Morgoth, who held a fortress in the west and desired mastery over the entire continent. As his influence spread, many came to worship the Dark Lord, while others, who came to be known as the Atanatari, rejected the corruption of their people and journeyed west in search of a new homeland. Meanwhile, the Noldor elves, who traveled from Valinor to Beleriand, seeking to wage war upon Morgoth, were in need of a new High King to lead them after the death of Feanor in battle against Balrogs. Two possible candidates emerged, in Maedhros, the deceased king's firstborn son, and Fingolfin, Feanor's younger brother, who held the loyalty of his own faction of Noldor elves. However, Maedhros was soon captured by the Dark Lord when he attended peace talks that were revealed to be a trap. Though Morgoth intended on using him as a hostage to negotiate their surrender, the elves refused to even reply to his demands, and so he imprisoned and tortured Maedhros, hanging him from the top of the mountain Thangorodrim by his wrist. Though he suffered for years, eventually Fingon, son of Fingolfin, set out and successfully rescued his cousin, creating a deep bond of respect and loyalty between them. Maedhros then voluntarily withdrew his claim for the throne, submitting to Fingolfin as High King of their people, uniting the Noldor of Middle-earth under a single ruler. However, the other sons of Feanor did not agree with their elder brother's decision, as it meant the throne would pass them all by in favor of Fingolfin's line. In addition, they were each bound by the oath of Feanor, having vowed to retrieve the Silmaril jewels at any cost, and so in the years of peace that followed, some tensions remained between their factions. Fingolfin established his kingdom in Hithlum, while his second son Turgon ruled as Lord of Nevrast along the western coast. The leadership of Dorthonion was then granted to Angrod and Aignor, the sons of Finrod and grandsons of Finarfin, younger brother to the High King. In order to avoid trouble between Noldor factions, the sons of Feanor moved east, with Maedhros ruling over Himring, Maglor the Singer settling in Maglor's Gap, Celegorm and Curufin leading their people to Himlad, Carentir becoming lord of Thargelion, and the hunters Amrod and Amras establishing themselves in Estolad. After Morgoth's defeat in the battle under the stars, he suffered yet another setback with the creation of the sun and moon, as their light weakened his armies who were bred to fight beneath a darkened sky. Retreating into Angband, Morgoth created a thick layer of smog over his lands to protect his warriors and give them time to acclimate to these new conditions. However, by the year 60 of the First Age, Morgoth's orc armies were once again ready for battle, and so were sent forth in the Dagor Aglareb, engaging the sons of Feanor in the east, while battling the armies of the Noldor king Fingolfin and his Sindar ally Círdan in the west. Although the Sindar elves of Doriath and Osiriand refused to involve themselves, their elven kin succeeded in defeating the Dark Lord, with Angrod and Aignor holding back Morgoth's armies in Dorthonion long enough for Maedhros to counterattack from the east, while Fingolfin did the same from the west. Pushing the invading forces back, the elves quickly surrounded the area, and since they were not able to breach the walls of Angband, they instead laid siege, establishing a long period of relative peace for the region. In the years that followed, the Noldor thrived, with Finrod leading some of their people to the newly built city of Nargothrond, while his cousin Turgon, having been granted a dream of the Valley of Tumladin by the Vala Ulmo, led his followers from Nevrast to establish the kingdom of Gondolin. Yet while the elves prospered, continuing to spread across Beleriand, the Dark Lord Morgoth worked in the shadows, rebuilding his forces as well as capturing wayward elves and corrupting them to act as his spies amongst the Noldor. Nearly a century after his defeat at Dagor Aglareb, Morgoth sent an army of orcs to invade Hithlum from the Firth of Drengist in the west, but they were swiftly defeated by the elves under Fingon. Realizing his orc-based armies were not enough to defeat his hated enemies, Morgoth worked to breed the race of dragons, hoping to use them as weapons of mass devastation. In the year 260 of the First Age, the first of these creatures, Glaurung, the father of dragons, left Angband without permission and attacked the elves of Ardgallen. Yet because he was not fully matured, Fingon's archers were able to penetrate his skin, quickly driving him back. Though he was upset by the revelation of his secret project, Morgoth continued to breed orcs, trolls, and dragons, awaiting the day he might renew his war of conquest. During the years of peace in Beleriand, the Edain began to migrate into the west, made up of 3 human tribes descended from the Atanatari, who rejected Morgoth's teachings in the east. The first to pass over the Blue Mountains was the House of Beor, who then made contact with the Noldor elf Finrod, who helped them settle in Estolad. Continuing to develop a friendship with the elves, the House of Beor soon moved further north to establish themselves in Ladros, which was a part of Dorthonion, ruled over by the sons of their ally Finrod. The second tribe of the Edain were known as the Haladin, or the House of Haleth, who came to know the Sindar elves of Doriath and were granted permission to settle the forest of Brethil, where they largely kept to themselves. The third tribe, originally known as the House of Marak and later as the House of Hador, were a tall and fair-haired warrior people who settled in Estolad and Ered Wethrin before moving to Dorlomin and pledging their loyalty to Fingolfin. Yet not all were interested in befriending the Noldor, with even some of their fellow elves resenting their presence in Middle-earth, remembering what it was like before the wars with Morgoth and Rising of the Sun. One of these elves was the great Sindar blacksmith Eol, who came to be known as the Dark Elf, moving from Doriath deep into the forests of Nan Elmoth, where trees grew so large sunlight did not touch the ground. In Nan Elmoth, he built his home and lived in relative solitude, using his great skill to craft Anglakel and Anguirel, two black-bladed swords forged from the metal of a fallen meteorite. In order to claim the lordship of this new homeland he loved, Eol gifted Anglakel to King Thingol, who accepted it as payment. Though he continued to hate their people, the Dark Elf married Aravel, the White Lady of Noldor and daughter of Fingolfin, having found her wandering through the area and casting an enchantment to ensure she could not find her way out of the forest. Aravel bore her husband a son named Maiglin, who grew up to be a gifted smith like his father, often accompanying him on his travels to the Dwarven kingdoms, where they were considered honored guests. However, Maiglin and his mother did not share the love of darkness, and so eventually left Nan Elmoth without permission, traveling to the hidden city of Gondolin, where Aravel's elder brother Turgon ruled as king. Chasing after his wife and son, Eol was brought before Turgon, who explained that the location of their city must remain a secret, and so no one could leave. However, he then invited Eol to live with his wife and son in Gondolin as honored subjects of the realm. Eol refused to bow before the elves who stole his people's lands, and proudly chose death for himself and his son, revealing a javelin he had concealed and throwing it at Maiglin, who stood nearby. Yet Aravel threw herself before him and was struck by the projectile, eventually dying from the wound. In punishment, the king ordered Eol thrown off the high cliff of Karagdur, but defiant to the end, the Dark Elf used his final words to curse his traitorous son, condemning him to suffer the same fate as his father. After nearly 400 years spent rebuilding his armies, the Dark Lord felt ready to attack, and so began the Dagor Bragolach, causing the mountain of Tangorodrim to erupt in a river of fire that destroyed the elven armies besieging Angband. With the way forward cleared, Morgoth's lieutenant Glaurung, the now fully matured father of dragons, led an army of orcs, trolls, and balrogs to attack the lands of the Noldor. Although the Edain rallied to reinforce their elven allies, their armies were overwhelmed by the ferocity and scale of the attack, with Morgoth's forces quickly killing Angrod and Aignor to conquer Dorthonion before scattering the armies of the sons of Feanor at Lothlan and Maglor's Gap, driving Maglor into retreat. Fortunately, he was able to lead the last of his men to Himring, where he helped his brother Maedhros successfully defend his realm. The Dark Lord's forces also attacked Thargelion, leaving Caranthir to flee to Amon Ereb and breached the pass of Aglon, prompting Celegorm and Curufin to retreat to Nargothrond, though Maedhros eventually led his warriors to retake the pass. Enraged by the slaughter of his people and allies in the north, King Fingolfin personally rode to Angband and challenged Morgoth to single combat. Though the Noldor king died in the fighting, he was able to wound Morgoth several times, even stabbing him in the foot with his final breath, wounding the Dark Lord so badly he walked with a limp for the rest of his life. With Fingolfin dead, rule fell to his firstborn son Fingon, crowned the new High King of the Noldor from his seat in Hithlum. In the years that followed, Morgoth's attacks continued, with his lieutenant Sauron leading an army to capture the island of Minas Tirith in the pass of Sirion, trapping its ruler Orodreth and his uncle Finrod. However, the elves were able to escape slaughter, thanks to the intervention of the human Barahir, lord of the House of Beor, who led his men to engage the enemy in the Fen of Serek, giving their allies time to retreat further south to Nargothrond. In gratitude for their help, Finrod gifted their leader the Ring of Barahir, promising to aid the House of Beor should they ever be in need. Love audiobooks? Then be sure to check out Audible, where they have the world's largest collection available. Simply sign up through the link in the description box below and get 2 free audiobooks to start out. A special thanks to all those who contribute to CivilizationEx, like Grognar Scarface, Fred Heartless, Knight of Iron and Ice, Isle Shadowcat, and Barachalo. If you'd like to help Civilization X, click on the Patreon link, and please be sure to like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and click on the links to see more.